We've heard the global case and the human one. Now the hard question with every movement reaches, where's the capital? How do we deploy capital at scale? We're now going to be joined by Pat Pace of Utimco, who will sit down with Pete Hudson of Alta Partners. Pat, over to you.
Excellent. Thank you, David. And thank you, Vineet, for inviting us to come talk this morning. Pete and I very much view this as a conversation. And so while we talk through a range of topics on investing capital into innovation and the brain, we would love your questions, because as investors, this is a very different audience than we normally speak to. And so if there are topics or questions that you have that we may not cover, we'd love to hear them. So our general plan is we're going to talk for about 30 minutes and hold the last 10 for some Q&A. But if we hit something in the middle that you want to raise your hand, go for it. So first, we'll just do some intros. So Pat Pace, Senior Managing Director, Head of Private Equity at Utimco. For those of you who don't know Utimco, we manage the endowment assets primarily for UT. We also manage about $11 billion for Texas A&M. Our AUM is about $90 billion. The private equity portfolio is about $20 billion of that. The way that we invest typically is into funds. So we pick partners like Alta on the venture side, and we are scaled investors and partners with them. And then we do some direct investing alongside of that, but it's typically alongside our partners. Personally, my background, I'm actually a doctor by training. I went to medical school at UT Houston, just down the road. And about a year into my residency, transitioned careers, was a 15-year healthcare investor before joining Utimco. So Pete, thank you for coming. Pete came down from Denver, so super excited to get to spend some time with him as well.
Well, thank you, Pat. Before I get started, I have to say I was a little overwhelmed talking to a brain summit. I definitely had to do a little research before getting here. But I want to thank Pat, Utimco, for really jump-starting Alta when we were getting started about 10 years ago. UTMB for having us, Vineet, and the whole team here for giving us a time to have a fireside chat. So I'm Pete Hudson. I was an ER doc back in the 90s when Netscape went public. I saw technology being utilized by just about every other industry and creating an enormous amount of value during that inflection point. And yet I'd go and see patients and handwrite charts and get frustrated on how things didn't work and were inefficient. So started really a journey that has progressed throughout my whole career of applying technology to healthcare service and care delivery. It started out as an entrepreneur, starting companies on the side while practicing. Fortunately, I knew enough about those problems to craft solutions that worked, and were able to scale them and sell those companies, and got interested then in how to invest in similar enterprises, and that led to investing and then venture investing with a group called Alta Partners, and we can get a little bit more into what we focus on. But that's my basic career overview.
Awesome. So let's start. I think just an overview of Alta would be great. Just talk about your partners and how you guys focus on investing into technology in the early stages.
Well, I guess first, has anyone here presented or worked with a venture investing group before? Raise your hands. Okay, great. Lots of great entrepreneurs in the audience. So we're a little different. We're three individuals. We've known each other for between 20 and 30 years. My two partners are Bob and Dan. Bob was at Domain Ventures, Fraser, and then the Gates Foundation prior to partnering with us on Alta. And Dan was at Montgomery Securities, Bankers Trust, and then Alta really since the early days when it started. And when we got together to start a new series of funds called the Alta Next Gen Funds. We were focused on two areas that we thought had the ability to change healthcare and make an impact. The first was technology-enabled services. So the ability to drive service revenue and actually care delivery, but leveraging technology. So back to some of my early lessons on applying technology. So that's one area, and that's what I focus on. My two partners focus on therapeutic development. So we don't do devices, diagnostics, equipment, anything else, but drug development and therapeutic development. So, and their bar is really focused on curative capabilities. So, not sort of next in class, type drugs, but things that are first in class and really have curative capability. And then we're also a little different because we focus on a very small portfolio of highly convicted investments. So, teams that really understand the problems they're focused on, great technology, big total addressable markets, and then we get very involved. We're on the board. We work with the management teams. As a former operator, I'm probably more involved than some people would want me to be involved, but you have to find the right people that appreciate the things that we can bring to the table, not only in capital, but in knowledge and experience.
Yeah, it's interesting as both former doctors, I think we bring a lot of the missional value into the investing world. At UTIMCO, it's actually part of our mission, vision, values is to cure cancer and other debilitating diseases. So it's something our entire firm thinks about, but as a physician leading a private equity practice, it's especially when I get to do healthcare stuff, I care a ton about it. Maybe just, on that, talk a little bit more about when you're thinking about health tech and delivery of care and all of that. What are some of the themes that you think about leveraging health tech into, improving lives?
Yeah, I think, it's always best to invest in what you know best. And then if you look at where money is spent, where cost is maybe wasted in healthcare, and those are big numbers across the country. I was very focused on acute care, so understanding, acute care drives a lot of costs, a lot of outpatient costs, and a lot of inpatient visits. Specialty pharmacy has been growing dramatically, 9% a year. We benefit on that side, on the drug development front, but on the tech-enabled services side, payers, employers, even health systems want, some ability to control and manage that more effectively and participate in it. Primary care is a great access point. We've done a couple very unique investments in the primary care space. And then I think as health systems get bigger, have more and more leverage in metro areas, as payers get bigger aggregate members and have leverage, there's this natural sort of almost mutual assured destruction between the two. They're partners, but they're also adversaries, and it's very challenging to do something that enables one more than the other. And so in the last fund, we've started looking at, can we build a vertically integrated model that really combines the two together? And so, those are areas that I focused on personally. One other area is just, I think as health systems grew over the last 100 years, there was a lot of efficiency in aggregating medical equipment and human capital around a building. And a building like this, people can walk to the next office and talk and collaborate. There's a real benefit to that. But there's a lot of real estate costs associated too. So we've looked at distributed in-home care, and at least have I think the leader in the U.S. in terms of high acuity care in the home called Dispatch Health that does 50% of the hospital at home waiver programs and has seen 1.5 million patients for ER in the home replacement. So that's been an area that we focused on too.
Yeah, Dispatch, great company. We actually invested directly alongside Alta and Dispatch. For me, that one was super interesting because when you think about care migrating to the least expensive and probably highest patient quality location, and you think about just like the mental health benefits of someone who can get care in a very familiar environment versus going to a hospital, which is very foreign, it's sterile, it can be super intimidating. It just totally resonated with me. I want to zoom out and talk market for a minute. And healthcare is across both the services and the biotech side. It certainly sees its ebbs and flows of capital. I'll contrast that with how we think about investing at UTIMCO, which is for our private equity program, we look out 10 years and we budget and we basically commit a pretty consistent amount of dollars every year. Whereas when you look down into the markets, if I just went, let's go back 6 years, there was a massive amount of capital that went into, all of healthcare during COVID. And I think the neuro and brain spaces were part of that upswing. And then the last 3 or 4 years, it's been like a desert. And we've seen many companies struggle to raise their next round, even with, really attractive fundamentals. And now thankfully that's turning. It's certainly turning on the biotech side. We've seen M&A pick up quite a bit recently. I think we're seeing it on the health tech side. Pete, my first question for you on that is when you're in the middle of that desert and you've got a company that's got a great reason to win, but is struggling to raise capital, how do you guys think about managing those situations?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think one of the reasons, we found each other and started working together was, our team had a lot of experience through different cycles, and UTIMCO had, decades of experience working with different managers and their perspectives and working through a lot of different cycles. And so, every one of these, boom times or bust times in the venture world is cyclical. So when things are going really well, you need to start thinking about, the drought coming. And so, as COVID got everybody thinking about healthcare, I often say the only thing that ever goes viral in healthcare is an actual virus, which, kind of started the whole going viral concept to begin with. People don't want to think about healthcare. We all think about healthcare because we're in the space. We love to think about it. We work at it. We think about it after work, et cetera. But most of the world thinks about, soccer or football or their job or their kids or school or whatever. They don't want to think about healthcare until that one moment when they don't feel good. And then they think about it a lot. And so, during COVID, everybody thought about healthcare. It was in the national news every day. And so it made the entire ecosystem focus on, what healthcare needed, how inefficient at times healthcare was, what innovation was required. And so it was great. For our companies, we had great follow-on financings during that time at great valuations, et cetera. And we took advantage of that knowing there's going to be a drought coming. So we tried to overcapitalize, as appropriately as we could during that time. And then, over the last couple of years, it's been really tough. And so you hope that you overcapitalized enough and prepared enough for those times, and you can still keep growing and making the decisions you need to make at the company level. That included at times a lot of different strategies. So in particular on sort of my side of the business, we've done a lot of mergers. We merged Everside Health with Marathon Health, which is a direct primary care business. Now we're the second largest in the country and profitable and growing quickly. We merged Transcarent with Accolade, and now we have a much broader platform, more customers, broader syndicate of investors, and a larger product portfolio. We merged Dispatch and Medically Home, so we took acute care, outpatient acute care in the home and inpatient acute care in the home, and we merged those two together, and now we have sort of the whole continuum for a health system enterprise relationship. That shored up capital bases, brought scale, made companies stronger. So those were all part of the strategies. A lot of that stuff doesn't get announced. It doesn't, make the headlines, but it's all the hard work in between the cycles that needs to be done to continue to position the portfolio to perform.
Well, I would be remiss if we didn't talk about one of your biggest successes during that period. I think the Colonia story would be super interesting to tell the audience. My 30,000-foot view was a company that was literally on life support, and 2 years later, just recently was acquired by Lilly for over $7 billion. So it just goes to show you what can happen if you have the right strategy and you have the fortitude to work through those difficult situations. Maybe just talk a little bit more about what happened in that situation.
Well, Colonia is a great company, very interesting in sort of the history of what we focused on at Alta. Alta was one of the Series A investors in Kite, which was one of the first CAR T cell therapy companies out there and sold to Celgene back in the day. Was a great exit. But as you know, CAR T's had some challenges with some of the complications due to taking your, immunological cells out, preserving them, using different strategies to create the therapeutic and then inject them back into your body. And so when a founder came to us and was interested in doing this in vivo, and we'd had a little bit of experience with that as well previously with another company. He had a great resume, very, very interesting guy, very driven, a lot of success at a former company called Bluebird. And, he really wanted to create an in vivo CAR T therapeutic with the first, target being blood cell cancers. And it was a very promising technology along the way. We had some good initial, animal data. We had some challenging manufacturing processes which burned through some capital. And I think it was back in 23 maybe, we tried to raise some money and nobody was investing in biotech. It was bleak. So we huddled together and formed a bridge and bridged the company to the next set of data. And when we got the next set of data, they were spectacular. Probably some of the best data we've ever seen in our careers. I think the first target is multiple myeloma, and of the first 10 patients at different therapeutic levels, in the phase 1 study, there was no sign of cancer in any of the patients, after, at the different measurement periods later. So profound platform capability for multiple oncology targets. And so, started getting inbound this past year. There's a lot I can't say because it's not fully closed yet. But great outcome. It's wonderful to be sitting here with one of our biggest backers and strongest supporters and early supporters, and being able to deliver back some real value from the portfolio. And more importantly, I think there's 20 new studies already in process of being designed for this platform. So the impact that it could have is dramatic. That's kind of why we do this. We could all be in lots of different interesting areas that are challenging and hard to figure out, but we do this because of that and the fact that it's going to make a difference and it's going to provide some benefit to humanity and to our peers.
Yeah, even relative to the Kite and Juno technologies, the potential of this is amazing for patients. So it's really, really awesome to see. Let's transition to everybody's favorite topic. Should we talk about SpaceX?
Yeah,
I'm just kidding.
I don't want to live in a colony in Mars, so I know that's valuable, but
Seriously, let's chat AI a little bit, just in terms of in thinking about investing into AI. I think is a relevant topic. Maybe just big picture, what are you seeing activity-wise in terms of AI investments into healthcare?
That's a great question. So I think in the last year, there's been $37 billion invested into healthcare venture, and 46% of that has gone into AI companies. And if you look at the money flow, it's gone into a very small group of companies. And to me, that can only do one thing: drive valuations. And so great paper returns, tough decisions on follow-on investing for those areas. And if you look at like the typical SaaS IPO occurs when there's about one time, the ratio to revenue to invested capital is about 1.0. And right now, the ratio of invested capital to revenue in the AI healthcare space is about 0.2. So there's a lot of growth that has to occur on the revenue side to start to deliver some of that capital back. The areas that are interesting so far, I kind of divide them as clinical and administrative. Administrative, there's so much waste and so much human-operated processes in healthcare delivery that AI can help a lot. And call centers are kind of the bane of my existence in healthcare services. They're very costly, very inefficient. Nobody likes to talk on the phone, and they drive a huge sort of cost center in these businesses as they scale. So there's a lot of opportunity there. And so we apply that in our companies, and we try not to do a lot of press on we're an AI company, this or that. We try to use and utilize technology wherever best, and AI provides some best-in-class technology for solving these issues. Where I worry about investing in it is, providers will deploy AI to be more efficient and have much more efficient claims processes to the payers, better documentation, broader scope of acuity, et cetera, et cetera. At the same time, the payers are doing the same thing. They're looking at, how do I deny? How do I look at, trends across providers that, are probably coming from technology enhancements. And so it's an arms race between the two. The dollars can only grow so much, and so there's going to be a balance between the two. And so I don't know where those companies exit to. I don't know if one crushes it so well that it becomes, a huge outcome, and then actually who buys it also. On the clinical side, there's huge promise, but there's proprietary data sets everywhere, and people don't share. There's not a lot of data liquidity. People are still rolling out Epic. They're still implementing Cerner. There's not a lot of data liquidity to fuel what really needs to be done on the clinical side.
I like that term, data liquidity. I think we're short on data liquidity at Utimco. So when I think about AI, we've got a couple of platforms in-house, and our biggest challenge is actually getting our data into a form that we can actually leverage these AI platforms to make ourselves more efficient. So I think it's I'll say an underappreciated challenge of implementing AI. And so when you think about the fact that a lot of the venture-backed AI companies are running well ahead of fundamentals, on the flip side, like in my buyout portfolio, all of our software companies that comp themselves to public companies are all down 10 to 20% because all the public companies were sold because of this fear that they will be, irrelevant. That's probably an overreaction. I'm sure some will move quickly and will implement AI in their own platforms, and they'll be just fine. Maybe just back on the clinical side, the data liquidity is certainly important. What about the regulatory angle? How do you see, practices navigate, or companies navigating the regulatory environment to make sure that AI can be used well?
I think we're starting to see in radiology some, some approved technologies to help image analytics and things like that. On the drug development side, we've looked at a bunch of different companies that have very encouraging models using AI to help discover new targets, new molecules, et cetera. The challenge is you still have to go through all the same clinical trials. You have to start in animals, you have to start, and we try to get involved like when there's some good animal data and they're ready for phase 1. That's kind of a better entry point for us. So starting way back, in the AI space to try to find a target, it's a long time. That's probably beyond our fund length, to be honest. Hopefully we'll see some compression there and get some drugs out faster. And there's I think in silico is one company that, has a promising initiative there, but it's still very, very early days there. The regulatory challenges are significant, and that's why I think people are really leaning into the administrative side and the documentation side. But how much at the end of the day are you really going to pay for physician documentation enhancement, revenue cycle enhancement that gets countered by claims processing enhancement on the payer side? So there's a natural balance that I think is challenging.
Yeah.
One area that we are sort of leaning in heavily on the AI side, we have a company called Transcarent, and we were seed investors when it was an idea with a founder named Glenn Tolman. And Glenn founded a non-healthcare company originally, took it public, sold it. Then Allscripts in the 2000s took it public, did well. And then Livongo, which was a diabetes and chronic disease management company, sold that to Teladoc at the right time in COVID, had great returns. And then his next idea was, I want to create a technology solution to manage spend in the commercial space, so self-insured employers. That's where most of the margin in healthcare is in commercial insurance. And employees, I think, have very challenging environment signing up for 10 or 15 different point solutions if they even get there when they sign up for their benefits. So Glenn's idea was, let's use AI and technology to make a much better access and navigation solution for employees. And then let's use that in a way that looks at all the data, targets populations that need help, need engagement, and then manages drug and access to drive cost savings for employers. They have gone from an idea in 2000 to 1,700 business customers, a lot of the Fortune 500, including some really big tech companies, which we're not allowed to mention. And multiple different, basically a broad-based, comprehensive platform now. We bought an AI company about 2.5 years ago and sort of quietly started using it, building it, and now patients have these interactions with agentive AI and access to a clinician in 60 seconds when they need it, and access to all sorts of information and ways of navigating their healthcare benefit structure, just through technology, to the point where people that are engaged in this product are saving 20% of their total cost of care annually, and 30% when they use it for the pharmacy solutions that we've built. So super promising company there.
So last topic before we take some questions, I want to talk a little bit about how you think about finding the executives or entrepreneurs that you guys like to back. And I'm going to start, it's a brain summit, so let's start with neuro, and just in big picture. So when I think about neuro, especially like in the biotech space, it's been a challenging arena. There are a couple of reasons for that. It's, when you think about venture dollars in the biotech, about 20% of the dollars go into neuro-associated products or platforms. That compares to cancer, where you see about 50% of venture biotech dollars going into oncology. If I thought, what are the drivers of that? There's probably twofold. One is the length of time to run a trial in the neuroscience space tends to be a year to maybe 2 years longer than a cancer trial or other trials. And then the other is, and I think this is improving on, if I think about neuro rare diseases or Alzheimer's or Parkinson's, where we're identifying biomarkers, but historically there's been a lack of biomarkers to actually have objective endpoints that you can measure. And so I think with that, I actually think the neurospace will improve and probably will see incremental dollars in the future. But on the psychiatry side, for example, where a lot of the clinical trial endpoints are more subjective and they're more, you're more at risk of having some placebo noise. Those are going to continue to struggle, I think, which is disappointing. One really cool thing, I'm going to go on a tangent now, was the recent passage of the DPRIT program following CPRIT from several years ago. Vineet asked me if Utimco was going to invest alongside DPRIT, and I said, well, that's not how we work. But I think look, I'm proud to be in Texas where we're doing it. It's super cool. But seriously, as we think about it, like when Utimco thinks about investing, we don't really think about investing thematically. So I don't go out and say, I need to find a venture partner that does cancer, or I need to find a venture partner that does, neurodegenerative diseases. We think more about our partners. It's a people business. So I think about like Pete and Dan and Bob, and do I want to partner with them, and do I trust them to be good stewards of our money, and that they are in the right networks and have the investment acumen to find the right companies to invest into. And I think if you take that a step further and say, well, what does that mean for them? What are they looking for? It may be interesting for you to talk about what it is that you look for. What are the characteristics and traits of these founders that that attract you to these guys or women?
Yeah, I think even before thinking about that, like the last couple of years have been challenging, and we've seen valuations super high in the AI space, but the business models are the same, to be honest. When you think about open evidence, amazing technology, but Micromedics had something, then Medscape had something, then UpToDate had something. It's the same business models, licensing and advertising. So these companies are going to have to transcend out of traditional business models to be valuable. But when we look for individuals, in the past couple of years, we've kind of consciously slowed down because of the environment, and that's part of the stewardship thing too. Like, it's not about deploying the same amount of capital every year and just marching forward. Maybe that works in the public markets, and cost averaging, but in venture, I think you got to be careful with that. And so, we've consciously been pretty critical and thoughtful over the last couple of years. But when we're very people-oriented in terms of our investing strategy, we need to have great leaders, at least in my space, and I would believe Bob and Dan feel this also, that have great subject matter expertise, first and foremost. You got to understand the problem that you're trying to solve. And I've very rarely seen anyone say, I just want to start a company. I don't care what that company is. I'm going to start a company. I want it to be successful. It's mostly like, I have a problem I want to solve, at least in healthcare. And then, it's very easy to say, hey, doctors need more information. Let's create an information system. But unless you have lived and breathed it, you don't understand how doctors may access information, how frequently, when they need it, what kind of stuff they need, when they don't need it, what your assumptions are based on. And so understanding the problem, subject matter expertise, number one, great leadership skills, dedication to solving the problem. Like, I can't not do it. Like, we like that sort of mentality. Like, I'm perseverating about solving this issue, and I have to do it no matter what. The ability to be coachable. If we can't bring a little bit of experience every now and then, to the boardroom, then we shouldn't be your investor. Period. Like, get money from somebody else. So those are things that we look at.
Cool.
And it's the same thing we look at in our investors. We have a small group of investors in the fund, and we want people that understand how we think about things. We want them to be great stewards of our process also, and so it's been a really good combination.
Awesome. Thanks, Pete. I think with our last 5 minutes, we'll do some Q&A. I think we've got a couple of questions.
Hi, good morning. My name is Bea Gasca. I'm here with Mindsurf, but I also collaborate with the workplace pillar for Project Metis. And my question today is, it's not a secret that technology has contributed to some of the mental health challenges that we face today. Do tech investors have a responsibility not only to invest in solutions, but also to address the unintended consequences created by the industry itself? I'm thinking on compensate the unintended damage of technology, investing in social responsibility or philanthropic projects. Do you tech investors have these projects on your agendas? Thank you.
I think it's a great question, and it's a huge problem. Social media in particular. I have 2 daughters, and I think they're just starting to come out of the social media haze. But you find yourself, they're so good at getting you to think about the next scroll and the next view. We're all susceptible to that. We're not tech investors. We're health tech, so very different. But I think something has to happen. I don't know if it's a regulatory standpoint or if there's nonprofit investing to help treat and change and modify the way society uses technology today. Needs to happen.
Yeah. I have 4 daughters, so I've felt that too. It's a huge problem.
Hi, my name is Chuck Papagiorgio. I run a company called NeuroEM Therapeutics. I don't have an existential question. I'm an engineer. I ask basic questions. So here's the thing. I've built a dozen companies over the last 40 years. Some failed, some succeeded. I'm very familiar with the valley of death. Biotech has a very clear funding process. If you want to invent a drug, we've been here for a day and a half, and 95% of the conversation has been about drugs and pharmaceuticals. But what about technoceuticals? What's the funding process? Because I got to tell you, I talked to CEOs. I switched. I sold my AI company 6 years ago, and I decided to do something meaningful, like treat Alzheimer's. And let me tell you something. Technoceuticals are tough to get funded. Try to go to neurotechnoceuticals, it's nearly impossible. So I'm asking, you guys have been around longer than I have as investors. What do you see as possible solutions to that problem?
Are you just to make sure I understand, are you talking about like digital therapeutics?
Nope.
No.
Actual technology, technical solutions that bring therapeutics to, like Wavy, for example, is a diagnostic, but there's similar technology for therapeutics. We have one. How do you get technoceuticals? Because you go talk to people, and they're like, oh, if you were a drug, we'd get the data, but you're a device. That's a problem. And at some point, we got to stop looking at pharmaceuticals. We got to look at other solutions. And that's kind of trying to figure out what's the right way to figure it out.
I think it's an IP issue. If you have intellectual property on a molecule, it's different than a technology solution that you have to find the business model for. And I was a huge believer as I started looking at some of the digital therapeutics out there, but then I didn't see payers funding them in the same way that they would fund a drug. when they reimburse it. And that's the core problem is you have to look at the revenue model and work backwards. And where's the money, the revenue going to come from? If you can find that, and discretionary spend is a very interesting place in healthcare. People spend a lot of money for a lot of different things that insurance doesn't cover. That might be the place to go where it's consumer dynamics.
Well, it is. And 5 years ago, I was called the crass soulless capitalist because I chose to bring this technology through a wellness path because I could and generate revenue. But the therapeutic still is the main objective. And as far as IP, we got 15 patents. I'm not. It's not it. It's just finding the right pathway. And we don't know who these people are. And that's the challenge. Maybe you guys do, right? That's what I'm kind of looking for.
We have companies that are saving $1,500 a visit for different kind of care models, and the payers aren't reimbursing appropriately. So it's a problem we all face. I feel your pain.
Yeah, so I want to get you to kind of consult to us as a field, and I'm a psychologist, and one of the biggest challenges we have in the field is moving upstream. We pay most of the healthcare spend is on treating illness, but the biggest returns are going to be when we can get further upstream. How do you think about that as a VC? And if you were really trying to incent or support efforts to do that, how would you approach that problem?
Asking an ex-ER doc to think upstream, that's kind of challenging, isn't it?
ER docs are probably, actually I got the whole term upstream from an ER doc who said we got tired of treating kids for head injuries, so we started to go upstream and educate the community about wearing helmets. So I actually got that from a
No,
ER
I mean,
doc.
it's true. We see the slice of life. We see what doesn't work in every category of medicine. Again, you got to look at payment models. So health plans work on annual contracts. And so you can only go upstream enough that that annual contract delivers value back to whoever the fiduciary is. If they would do 5-year contracts and could price those, there would be a lot more business, I think, focused on upstream wellness prior to the care that you end up having to give in that annual time period. So it's a fundamental structural challenge. The federal government probably has the best opportunity because they own 50% of the healthcare spend, and Medicare, fee-for-service, et cetera, has a lot of dollars at play, and they have innovative programs, but it's hard to implement because they're not as attached to the care delivery models, they get compensated by it.
Yeah, I was thinking about, I think especially moving risk to providers makes a lot of sense. But I'm just thinking is if I'm a provider really trying to provide a new service that is focused on prevention, on early intervention around brain health, can you think of a way of, as a VC, supporting that kind of business? And how would you help that kind of business really enter the healthcare market, given the way healthcare is financed?
Yeah, again, I'd start at total addressable market. How big is the problem? What the potential revenue models are. And I mean, here's a brain health TBI sort of recollection from my past. I had a daughter that played lacrosse. And the male lacrosse teams all had helmets. Female lacrosse teams, no helmets. She got 3 concussions. I said, if you want to keep playing, you got to wear a helmet. And she's like, none of the other girls are wearing helmets, Dad. Went to all the authorities, in our area, like, let's have helmets. I'm an ER doc. I see what happens. People wouldn't invest in that sort of fundamentally for prevention. So I think there's all sorts of stigmata, for one, and then there's business model challenges for prevention in every disease. brain health is no different.
Thank you. I think we're out of time. Thanks, Pete. Thanks, Vineet, for having us.
Thank you.
I think
Pat.
we are. I think we're due for a break. So until what time?
Before I let you go, Pat, though, before that, I do have a request, because I'm sure Dr. Reiser won't like anything more than you, Timco, creating a fund for UTMB Technologies. So,
You put me on the spot when I'm on the stage. Nice. Thank you.
well, thank you both for taking time.
Thank you.
And 10:15, everybody please be back.